Hey, look up. Hey, all, we're getting ready to record Queer Money, episode 4. We're going to talk about the extended cost of the cost of the extended wooing phase. So join us here in a few minutes. We'll see you.
You don't know our guests. You don't know our topics.
Right. Our guests will be joining in a few minutes here. Maybe.
Can't you send that out?
Yeah.
Why can't Dave Denver Law drink at the office? Shit, I forgot to tell him. Yeah, you can't use Safari. Download Chrome. Right. That's a takeaway. Tell him I said sorry. He uses Chrome. He uses Mac at an office.
Yep.
Oh. Fancy.
It looks like we've got 3 people in. Justin, if you're in, feel free to go ahead and call in.
He's probably not at his computer.
There we go.
What happened?
Looks like Justin joined. We'll do some sound check before we get started here.
We should add that to the
Let me get my
the guest kit that you need Chrome.
Yep.
Shoot. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying sorry to Dave.
No.
Not you.
You could care less about me.
Well, it's not bothering you.
Right, no. Hale, if you're watching, we're looking forward to having a couple of guests join where we're going to talk about this week's Queer Money topic of the costs of the extended wooing phase, why it seems like the gay community spends more time getting to know each other before we actually make the commitment.
And millennials and Gen Xers now.
Yeah, that's true. And
not gender bias.
What that may end up costing us. So feel free to join in the conversation. We're going to have our two guests join in here in just a minute.
You know what? I should probably be logged in case Dave tries to email. How did he email you? How did he direct message you if it doesn't work for it's just the video part that doesn't work for Safari?
Yeah. That
seems kind of stupid. Somebody needs to tell the blabbers that they need to get up on their shit.
Yeah. Well, this is being recorded, so they'll hear all of it.
Well, if they want to be
catching up with Apple and changing the size of their pictures, all that kind of stuff. What's going on?
To be on Blab? You have to. He's waiting for you to approve him.
Oh, there we go. Sorry.
Hello, friends.
Hey there.
Hey there, Justin. How's it going?
I'm good. I had a much cooler setting behind me up until about 15 minutes ago when the office I was working out of was a studio, was apparently booked for the next hour, and nobody told me. So I am now in a bubble of an office.
That's cool. Hey, Dave.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey there.
Yeah.
Are you at your office?
Oh, I'm at home.
I thought you said you were going to be at your office. I'm like, that looks like a kitchen.
Yeah. I recognize those cabinets from a picture on Facebook earlier today.
Oh, yeah, right. It was right here. A little bit different this morning, this afternoon.
Oh, I thought you had grabbed a glass of wine.
I did.
Oh, yeah.
Water.
John's got a glass too. So.
I know, he gave me the idea.
All right.
So, I can hear Dave and I can hear everybody fine. Can you hear us fine?
Yep.
I can.
Cool.
Yeah. We've got a little bit of feedback from somebody's, sounds like somebody's speakers.
How can you tell?
I don't know if you can turn them down just a little bit. But...
From mine,
still getting it?
because my speakers are going into my ear.
Oh, now, yeah,
Yeah.
everything
All good.
sounds good now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. Sometimes when everything's turned up a little loud, we get a little bit of feedback. So,
It's just like Janet said.
yep, feedback. All right.
All right. So, did you already send the blast out?
I didn't get the pop up. Yeah, it's too bad.
You did earlier. Where'd it go?
That was on the other when I was doing the test, sound check test.
So you gonna lock that seat?
Yeah. I'll leave that open for. Well, we're going to get started here in just a couple of minutes. We usually wait until right at the top of the hour to get started. But it sounds like.
No worries. I'm watching Trump do Trump things and being very competitive.
Yeah, he just took Florida. That's I don't know how I feel about this.
Rubio's sad face was kind of interesting to look.
That was fun to see.
Poor guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wanted it so bad. Mhm.
Yeah.
They screwed that campaign up badly because he should have had a walk in the park.
Yeah.
For a while there, I thought he was the most sane candidate. Then he
Because
just
he is the most sane.
Talked
candidate,
more.
whether you're right or left.
yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if there's enough alcohol in the world.
We're not going to get involved in politics. This show isn't about politics.
Although, given your backgrounds, I'm sure you and I are on the same page. So
I don't
I
know.
don't know. This is the first election where I'm just so befuddled and confused, and I don't really know who I like or who I don't like, and
I've never seen an election like
where's the
this.
none of the above box?
yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, I have not voted before because I've been so angry, and I'm kind of probably going to get to that point with this election.
You've never voted?
I've sat out elections that have pissed me off.
It's just again, that's a whole nother show.
David's trying to avoid this topic.
Yes, I'm very much trying to avoid this topic.
Uh-oh.
I'll just say early on, John and I in our relationship had a couple of times where we almost came to punches when it came to politics.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Shots.
Yeah, right. We had some screaming matches a couple of times, but anyway.
Maybe this is your year to agree.
We've actually agreed for the last several elections.
Yeah.
It's just we both have become a lot more mild.
Yeah, exactly. We've learned to get along, unlike the parties. Yeah.
So, well, that said, it's 7.
Yep, it's 7 o'clock, so we should probably go ahead and get started. So, hi, my name's David.
And I'm John.
And we're the Debt Free Guys, and this is Queer Money. And we believe that there needs to be a voice in the personal finance space for the LGBT community, and that's why we're here. We also believe that there are dreams, and all of us are dreamers, and this show is about helping those dreams come true. So let's go ahead and meet our guests.
No, you're trumping me.
I'm sorry.
I get some time too. This episode of Queer Money is about the financial cost of the extended wooing phase. Gays and lesbians have traditionally waited a little bit longer to settle down, and that seems to be another trend that's happening now with Gen Xers and millennials. So we want to talk about that and what the repercussions of the financial repercussions of that is. Also, just to give you a heads up, next week we are talking gay sex and gay money. So don't forget to go to debtfreeguys.com and subscribe to that because it should be fun no matter what. Our sponsor today is HIV Smart. We want to thank HIV Smart for their sponsorship. We appreciate them. And all that they're doing to dispel the myths of HIV, please visit their website at hivsmart.org. And we will go ahead and meet our guests. Dave, do you want to please give us an introduction of yourself?
Okay, I'm Dave Johnson. I'm a divorce lawyer here in town, and I work with the law firm Johnson Marquez. I am their managing partner, and I've been practicing for about 22 years. I started off in the gay and lesbian community, basically handling all types of cases. And I've written a book about relationships and primarily gay relationships. And so I'm here to talk about the financial implications of those.
And what is the name of that book?
Yeah, give some props to your book here.
The name of the book is Looking, Technology's Impact on Modern Relationships.
Yes, and it's available on Amazon and anywhere else?
Yeah, it's on iTunes, Amazon, it's everywhere.
Awesome.
I'll put that in our show notes. People can get out there and take a look at it.
Absolutely. And Justin, would you please give things?
Sure. I am Justin Simon. I'm the senior social strategist and consultant at moneytips.com. I am also on a 5-year running of attending pride parades down in either Long Beach or Hollywood.
Nice.
And I'm the only straight man who was invited to Lesbian Attacks annual festival in West Hollywood.
What is that?
I get a little nod in my cap. It is when a few hundred lesbians suddenly diverge on what is a standard I guess for lack of a better term, non-sexuality inclined bar and take it over for the better part of a full night and just turn the entire thing upside down. And was a pleasure and an honor to be the only straight guy in attendance.
That sounds a lot like Guerrilla Queer Bar that we used to have here in Denver several years ago.
Yeah.
All right, to go ahead and get things started, I wanted to kind of shake things up a little bit. I know I sent out questions and talking points to everybody to get started, but has anybody on this call made a stupid purchase in hindsight or spend an overabundance of money trying to win somebody else's attention or heart that they want to share that story? I have a story, but I don't want to bogart the whole conversation.
I think I've done that several times, and you guys are fully aware of me doing that several times.
Thanks to Facebook. Well, I know I had a boyfriend once, and I've only had 2. I had a boyfriend once, and at the time when I moved out here, I had a Jeep, which I thought was very practical. But then when I met him and we were going out, I was like, well, I have to buy a new car so I can meet his standards. But unfortunately, I couldn't afford a new car, and so I bought a brand new car off the lot, and I put a down payment on my credit card. So that was probably one of the dumbest things I ever did.
Yeah, I think for me, and I'm probably not alone, and especially when I talk to millennials about long distance relationships. For me, it's been plane tickets. Early in my career and early in my dating, I lived just about in 7 or 8 different states, and so it was a hop around the country. To date is you're not in a place long enough to develop a relationship, so you go back to your previous one, or maybe you were wooing somebody that you're no longer living near, and so for a while United Airlines and I were the best of friends, but unfortunately that meant my United credit card and I were the worst of enemies.
Yeah, absolutely. I never thought about that. With the world getting smaller with social media, you can meet anybody anywhere, and all of a sudden you're attracted to somebody. You have to fly just to see them.
Yeah.
Well, you'll see on dating apps where the range of people you're looking for is now sometimes up to 500 miles.
Oh, wow.
And so you're trying to find somebody to hook up with or somebody to start a relationship with. 500 miles isn't an afternoon drive. Yeah. You are flying, or if you are doing the weekend drive, that's gas and accommodations and the whole deal. So I think the travel certainly plays into the wooing phase at this stage.
Yeah, I don't know too many people. I don't know too many people that haven't bought airline tickets, dated somebody more than 500 miles away. I dated somebody in Montreal. It was, that was quite and then, if you have an economic disparity, you end up buying those tickets.
Yeah.
And so, I think that the dating apps and technology have complicated the financial picture because it adds all of this expense and it allows these long distance relationships.
Yeah. Do you think it adds any value to finding a better partner, possibly?
Well, your market, your pool is bigger, that's for sure, and so I suppose you have better odds of better aligning with somebody, and that's true with dating apps. Is that the relationships that come out of dating apps are actually more stable and last longer than traditional relationships.
That's interesting.
Well, I think so much of that is you get to screen the person beforehand. I mean, how many bad blind dates or, hey, my buddy or my pal or my girl knows somebody you should meet or oh, you're into surfing. Well, I know a guy who's into surfing. Meanwhile, there's no other compatible points anywhere along your whole interest level. So online dating and the apps have really said, okay, here are the 10 things you're interested in. Well, we found somebody who likes 8 of them.
Right.
And they might be 400 miles away, but that might be a better choice of somebody to spend time with.
Yeah,
that's true.
Well, I'm kind of out of the dating pool for a while. So is now the social norm to date online, so to speak, before you transition to face-to-face?
60% of relationships now are coming off of dating apps of one form or another. So that's the majority path for finding a partner now.
Yeah.
Wow. I should have more gray hair to prove how long that I've been away from the.
What are you talking about? David,
Right.
I wonder if that number isn't low simply because there are still some people who think there's a stigma to online dating and don't want to admit that that's how they're doing it. But other than going to your local bar, which you don't even see, and I live in a place called Hermosa Beach, California, very active community, young community, a lot of bars and restaurants, and it's not like there are singles nights. So if you're going out, you're hoping you meet somebody, at least on the apps and on other options. You're getting somewhat of a chance of saying, okay, well, they're looking for somebody, I'm looking for somebody, and we have at least a certain number of minimal things in common.
Right.
Well, that's the name of the book, Looking. But I mean, you're right. You can kind of go through an interview process, a sober interview process with a dating app, and it can last over several days. Where you can kind of winnow the candidates before you actually go and jump on an airplane or buy them a plane ticket or something. So yeah, I think that, I don't know, the 60% number, I think that was a 2012 survey. But what happened was it reached a tipping point where it used to be where people who used apps to date were in the closet, really. They didn't want to talk about it. They wouldn't share that information with anybody. But now you see them at the gym, and they're holding pictures up for each other, like, "Hey, look who I found." So it's now come out of the closet.
Yeah. So I guess that's evolving, just like everything else does, huh?
Right. Yeah. It's no longer you only have the one good Facebook picture or the one profile picture, because you can really explore. To a certain degree, it depends on how much somebody opens up. You can explore a lot more of their life, what's available or what they're willing to open up. And I guess if they're not willing to open much up, then it maybe is an indication that they're trying to hold something back, or that maybe you're not the right one.
So, but most people
intentionally holding you back from you.
Most people on Facebook only post like the positive stuff. So you're still getting a one-sided picture of that.
That's true,
right? So you can't trust everything on what you're reading online.
Right.
I've been told.
Yeah. Right. Well, unless you have those friends who just post all their drama, and then you get the other side.
Yeah, I was going to say, your Facebook timeline and my Facebook timeline are two very different timelines. Apparently, if you're getting nothing but positive news.
Gay men on mine. Well, so I'm actually quite interested that we have a gay man on the panel, because I have a question. So is it still the norm for the man to pay in a straight relationship when you're dating, or has that evolved as well?
Well, I assume you're talking to me.
Yeah.
And so, just making sure. I think the kind of rule of thumb is it's still the man's responsibility to pay for the first date. And then after that, it's more of a toss-up. We did a survey, not money tips. I don't want to say this was a money tip survey. This was for another client that we were working with. It was more in the relationship and sex advice world. And it was a survey. We asked about 100 people, which is a small number, but we were just trying to get a concept of, how many dates do you go on before you consummate the relationship, in essence. And the thing we were most surprised by was the number of women that said after the second date. And I only bring that up because they said by that point we know if we like them or we don't, and it's a tipping point. If the fun is good, then we're in, and if the fun is bad, we're out. And so generally the man will pay for the first date, and there's this kind of belief if you enjoyed the first date a lot of times the man will pay for the second with the anticipation that maybe, his date is going to get drinks afterwards if they continue to go out.
Sure.
And then, from there on, I find it's a combination of economic situation. If one makes significantly more than the other, I was doing very well and was dating a first-year teacher. And so the disparity was fairly large, and I felt bad making her pay for anything, given that she had to pay for pencils for her classroom.
Right.
The flip side being that after 5-6 dates, you also want to date somebody who is financially and fiscally responsible for themselves, and they've got to be able to pick up a meal here and there as well.
Right.
Yeah,
I do think that you're dealing, and when we talk to millennials about money, there's a lot more going Dutch. Because there's a feel of, well, I'm an independent woman, I make my own money, I make my own career, and I am not bound by the belief that it is chivalrous for a man to pay. It's almost sexist for a man to pay. And so there's an interesting dichotomy where the man wants to still hold on to that traditional male role in the first date, or early in the dating process, and the woman is saying, no, you need to see me as an equal from minute one,
Right.
and that includes financially.
Yeah,
That's
very
interesting.
Yeah. Again, we've been out of the dating world for a long time, and
Especially
eventually some of our
girls, so
close
I don't know
friends.
how that works.
Yeah.
So is there a correlation in the gay community, gay and lesbian, I should say, community, and who pays and how is that decided? I mean, I just assumed that I made David pay for everything we started, but there was bring up pieces other than I'm
Even
spoiled.
though I had a part-time job and was going to school, and he was working full-time.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't have any studies on it, and I can only, talk from personal experience, but it's the person with money that pays, usually the first date. And it's kind of unusual, I think, that expense would be shared. It's just a role that the person with the cash kind of adopts.
Well, how do you know who has the most cash or who has the most cash?
I mean, I think that's something that you've covered before you get there. Like, what's your job and where do you live and what kind of car you drive? How did you get here? I mean, I think that there's tip-offs and cues as to the economic, situation of each party. They could be completely false, right?
Right.
But the perception that they throw off generally leads to who picks up the bill, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting.
I think sorry to interrupt you guys. Just one more thing that's interesting is you'll see a lot of lack of commitment, even to first dates now, where people only say, well, why don't we meet for drinks? Because if it's not going well, they want to get out. They don't want to stay for a full dinner. They don't want to stay for, a whole night. And being that it's, hey, I'll buy a round or two of drinks. And if it's going well, then maybe we'll have dinner and see who splits the bill or who pays for the bill. But we live in such a reactionary, Snapchatty society. That those who are dating don't even want to give it a full meal to see if they like somebody.
Yeah, was it a Yelp study that you said that you found?
It's interesting you say that, Justin, because I found something on Yelp today that was saying that Yelp members recommend, let me see if I can find this here, they recommend starting off that way, that you start off with paying a lower amount on the first few dates as a way of kind of testing the waters as to whether or not this person is worth the investment, and then working your way up with how much you're willing to pay on a date. So maybe the first date is for a cup of coffee, and the second date is maybe for a drink, and then after that, maybe it's appetizers or something like that. And it's not until, maybe the third or fourth date that somebody's willing to put down $50 or $100 on a meal or something like that. And I guess to a certain degree, it kind of makes sense in a lot of ways. We kind of do that in the rest of our lives. We kind of inch into things. We test the waters with various things, and maybe that's the way more and more people are doing that. I guess there's two ends of the spectrum. Sometimes you think that there's some individuals who want to go big at the beginning and really impress, and then there's others who want to be a little bit more cautious. I'm going to post that information about that Yelp.
Dave?
Yeah, I two things. One, I don't think that the traditional paradigm of dating is surviving very well. I don't think that's the primary way that people meet anymore. And I don't think that there is such a thing as a first date. I think that people are meeting each other at dance clubs or at parties or online, and they're not saying, let's go to dinner. I mean, they're saying, come on over.
Right.
And I mean, true. I think that is the becoming the norm. And so traditional dating is not, I mean, it's just fading away. The other thing is the buying the dinner. I understand that probably there is a group of people that would want to baby step into spending money on somebody, but there's also the converse, and where the person really wants to overwhelm and impress the date. And spends too much on the dinner, or spends too much on whatever the first thing might be. And so I've definitely seen that, and I've done it myself, where you really want to impress somebody, so you take them someplace really nice to start off. I mean, you only get, what's the saying? You only get one chance at first impression. So,
It's true.
4.3 seconds online or something like that.
Right. It's pretty quick.
Oh, that's the second picture. No, we're out. We've already swiped.
You know what?
Pictures.
Better edit our pictures.
No, but Dave, that's a really interesting point. Is that if you're going into a relationship already saying, I'm going to spend big, I'm going to splurge on that person, does the second date then become a letdown? Right? Is it almost like you're showing your true colors? Oh, okay, so you dropped $400 on me for 2 tickets to a show and this fancy dinner and some wine, and now we're at Chili's for our second date. And don't get me wrong, a nice Chili's margarita is a lovely thing, but the disparity between the two, I wonder if that's not insight into a thought process and into a financial approach that actually may scare some people off, that you did too much and then too little.
Yeah,
that's true.
That could be. I guess. Anybody have any experience with that?
No pun intended, but you blew your wad on the first date, and now you're done.
We have our first ever. Thanks, David.
You're done for the month, and you can't afford to take them out on any more dates until paycheck comes around or something like that.
I mean, it could be, you've set unreasonable expectations that you just can't sustain. Your wallet is not going to be able to take them to, North every night for dinner. It's just not going to work.
So that leads me to my next question: Is there a motivation to being the one who, aside from the obvious, I guess, but to be the one who pays and impresses the other? What's the motivation for that?
Yeah, what is the real reason? You come from the straight perspective. You think of the historical or the traditional way. It was kind of the man's job, like you said, Justin.
Right.
The man steps up and pays. But why would it be? What would be the motivating force behind in a same-sex relationship? Why would somebody do
Sex?
Well,
right?
Yeah.
It's probably the same for straight relationships too nowadays.
Yeah,
but yeah,
that's true.
I mean, outside the context of like a first date, okay, so I asked this question to somebody that we know that's very, very wealthy one time at lunch. And I said, how do you do this? Because you've got all this money and you're not going to find anybody that's your equal. It's just going to be impossible. And so how do you manage that relationship? And he said, he was very blunt about it. And he said, look, I enjoy my lifestyle and I want to share my lifestyle and I don't mind paying for somebody else. I don't want to go eat at McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to take them to someplace nice and we're always going to go someplace nice. And if they can't afford it, then I'm going to pay for it. But he did say that the way that they would divvy up their expenses, which I still don't know how they would do it, but that they would do it in proportion to income because they were a couple. And for example, let's say they went to Iceland to go stay at the Ice Palace for a week straight. They would divvy up the cost of that trip based on what the relative incomes would be.
That's interesting.
Well,
That's a fascinating approach.
Yeah,
it is fascinating, but I don't know how. After a while, maybe the person who was paying more wouldn't feel like they were being slighted, and the person who wasn't paying as much would feel like they weren't meeting their end of the bargain.
But it's interesting. We were on Farnoosh. I don't know if you know Farnoosh Torabi.
Sure.
She's a personal finance expert and blogger. She has a show coming up here in April on CNBC. And we were on her podcast, and she was talking about her sister-in-law and her partner who had recently gotten married. And that was kind of their approach to a number of things was, one, there was a slight disparity of income, and that's what one would pay a little bit more than the other. And so it was kind of interesting. It is an interesting approach of saying you're responsible for what you're responsible for. We want to still have fun. I guess the question, though, would be still is if you're doing something and your 10% of the whole lot is still too much money for you, what ends up happening then? If you're only paying 10% of a $40,000 vacation and that $4,000 is too much for you, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how they work that out. I mean, hopefully that it's the same risk or the same investment for both parties. If it's 10%, 10% versus 90%, whatever it might be. Hopefully it's the same pain to both of them. The one thing that I would say about that relationship that I also asked him about when we had lunch was the dependence that you can create in a partner by being unequal financially. And that dependence becomes something that they expect, and then that can put a lot of pressure on a relationship when it's just expected that you will pay. It's expected that you're going to do all these things.
Right. Yeah.
So you can talk about.
I also think there's things beyond the finance. There's household responsibilities. A lot of times there's children responsibilities. There's other things. So the finance is just one aspect of what you need to divide and what you need to approach. And obviously being, we're on this blab, that's the important section. But I will tell you that I've been in relationships where the financial difference was fairly wide, but my partner did so much around the house and so much, other little things you don't even think about, that it felt like, I don't want to say they were earning their money, because that's, rude and it's just not true. Right. But they were doing 80% of, the cooking and the weekly, meals. And so if I'm paying for 80% of our trips, to me, that evens out. Yes, it's one's money and one's time, but if we're going to go, cliche and say time is money, they're spending much more time, cooking and grocery shopping and all of those things. And I don't want to put people into gender roles. It just so happened that she was a wonderful cook and really enjoyed it.
Just like me.
And so, so there was value in that. And the money became less of a disparity because I recognized what she brought to the table elsewhere had value beyond just what the credit card bill was.
So is that something that evolved on its own, or did you have to kind of discuss that in the beginning to make sure it was equitable in that way?
That's a really good question. I think it evolved over time. There were times where she would complain or feel like she was letting me down because she couldn't cover a bill, or I wanted to go to a concert. And she said, I just can't spend $75 a ticket. And I'd say, no, I want to go. It's a band I want to see. And she would be, a little upset that I paid for the ticket. And we kind of had that come to Jesus moment of, look, I didn't cook last month. I didn't pick up the kids. We don't have kids. But, similar, like we've heard conversations with, I didn't pick up the kids. I didn't do these things. So, if my choice of making money is to spend it on us so we can have an experience together, that's got to be okay here. We've got to figure out a happy medium where we both win.
Right. Yeah, that's true. It's all about being together, right?
Right. Well, it's a partnership, and I think that hopefully more of it is happening today, that there's more transparency in those partnerships and those relationships. I think, unfortunately, many of us come from familial backgrounds where there isn't much exposure or much talk about money or finance or how relationship decisions are made. But hopefully as we grow up, we kind of grow into that, and we can get into being able to share that kind of thing, those kinds of things with the person that we're intending to or are spending the rest of our life with.
Or a good chunk.
Yeah.
Well, so this is a good segue, I think, into, we're assuming, I think, that both partners so far are have same credit scores and debt limits or debt history and all that. What's the thought on dating somebody who was not financially stable? If you are somebody has a bad credit score or has a mountain of student loan debt, does anybody have any risks or concerns with that?
Well, as a divorce lawyer,
you probably see a lot of it.
Yeah, if you end up marrying that person, you adopt their financial situation, and while you're not responsible for the debts that they incurred prior to that, there's a question of what their need is during the marriage, and those debts are part of their needs. So you essentially become responsible in a way. And if you get divorced from that person, and they've still run up all these bills, and they're the ones, everybody has this idea that if we just keep separate checking accounts, and if we just, keep separate credit cards and all that kind of stuff, that it's okay, but it really isn't. And so if that person made bad choices before the relationship, ran up debt, didn't pay their bills, whatever it might be, and they kept doing that during the marriage, then the other partner is going to be fully responsible for that.
So the debt that they acquired before marriage, so you have all this debt, you get married, you're together, and then you get divorced again. Are you, as the financially stable person, still responsible for the debt they acquired before you got married?
No.
In divorce, that's not the case, right?
Okay.
Right. It's the debt that they would acquire during the marriage. So, for example, if they wanted to go back to school and they borrow a bunch of student loans, guess what? That's marital debt, and so you're going to be sharing that. But what happens is that if they are economically disadvantaged in the relationship and they owe all of this money and you're paying all of this money, you're never going to get that back. That becomes just a responsibility. So, it's especially if it's a longer term marriage, you have to worry about what we call maintenance. It used to be called alimony. And there's a formula for that, but one of the biggest factors is what's their need. And if they've got a lot of debt, they've probably got a lot of need.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Well, to me, I think one of the things you have to look at, if somebody's coming in with massive amounts of debt and a bad credit score, what other areas of their life are they irresponsible at?
Right.
You know, that's a huge red flag beyond just the financial situation, because I'm concerned that there's other things they're not telling me about or other poor decisions they're going to make. You know, if you're telling me, oh, I've got a 500 credit score and I've got $30,000 in debt and it's not student loan, it's consumer purchases,
Yeah.
you know, that's a deal breaker for me. I mean, maybe it's harsh, maybe it's not, but I don't want to be hamstrung by your inability to do anything.
Right.
It certainly would have a problem us getting a house, or if you need a car or any, you know, large scale purchases.
Right.
And then, you know, we're talking before about going on vacations or going away. If you've got as I knocked my mic over, sorry. If you've got, you know, five or high five figures in debt, I don't know that you're ever going to be able to afford it. So now I've got to cover everything.
Right.
And you know, my current girlfriend has spent the last 2 years really working to improve her credit score, but she came in with minimal debt. You know, when our relationship started, it was like $2,000, which to me is nothing, right? That's not ever going to, you know, stop any relationship. But if she had said I have $25,000 in debt, that we're probably not dating today.
Yeah. It's interesting. It begs the question of at what point or how soon in a relationship, getting into a relationship, do you try to start uncovering those kinds of those realities about somebody you're interested in?
One grinder.
Yeah,
What's your credit score?
Right. Yeah. You're not.
What's your credit score?
Right. Wait a second. I was already censored.
Sorry.
Do you guys think that happens?
You laughed, but that happened.
Really?
That you guys laughed, but that happened. Somebody on Grindr was on BuzzFeed a couple years ago, where his first picture was my credit score is a 785 or something like that. That was his first picture.
Yeah.
It was like just advertising it right off the bat.
You were going to ask that question, Dave?
What's that?
You were going to ask that question? Is that actually what happens?
I was going to ask, is that actually what happens, where you start some sort of interview and interrogation about what their financial situation is? Did you guys have that conversation before you started dating? I mean,
No,
He was just hot across the dance floor. I could see his abs, and I was like, that's what I need.
I'm serious. That's generally how those relationships start. And you don't have that discussion about credit scores and money in the bank. I mean, it's almost taboo to have that discussion, right?
It is, and that's part of the reason why we're maybe having these kinds of discussions, and part of the reason why we're talking about Queer Money. I mean, Queer Money, our goal with Queer Money is to try to help build a financially strong LGBT community. And one of the reasons or the ways we think that can be done is by peeling back some of the layers on some of these taboo subjects. I mean, my parents didn't really talk to us about credit cards and about debt and what it was like to create a budget growing up. And John said the same thing. And looking back on it, we wish we had. Now, that being said, I don't know if John would have told me 6 weeks or 10 weeks into our relationship that he had $25,000 in credit card debt and I had $15,000 in credit card debt, that it would have mattered that much. But
it worked out for us.
It did work out, but it does beg the question. I mean, if you do find out that somebody has $40,000 or $50,000 in credit card debt and you cannot afford to take care of their lifestyle and your own, how do you do? You know, what do you do? Or you maybe you know that they are. And I'm just going to pick on this example because you brought it up, Justin. You know, this person is a school teacher. They're a first grade school teacher. And you know that they're probably making $45,000 a year. But she happens to be driving a 1 or 2 year old Mercedes, lives in a condo or an apartment where she's paying, you know, $2,000, $3,000 a month. I see examples of people living these kinds of lifestyles. And you just got to wonder, you know, what's going on behind the scenes financially? Can you make some assumptions or should you ask questions?
Well, you know, the topic of this particular blab is the extended wooing phase. And so if you're really going to date somebody for longer than, you know, a month, at some point, if you decide you actually really are starting to like the person, I think finances should be something you should talk about. Now, I may not need to know your annual salary or what you're making, but we probably had some conversations about what you're doing at work, you know, how your boss is, when your next promotion may be, those things. And so you kind of tippy-toe around it and get a feel for it, without coming out and saying it. But they're also, it's different with somebody who's in a job that is assumed to make a certain salary. If you are a teacher, or if you are a cable TV installer, you're probably not making $250,000 a year. And that's not a slight. That's just what the pay is for that position.
Yeah.
Whereas, and not to, pick on Dave here, but if you're, a successful veteran lawyer, people would be very, very surprised if you said, "Oh, I make $47,000 a year."
Right.
Yeah, that's just the reality of the situation.
You would be very surprised.
You're not telling me something.
So I think you get a feel for it, but there is a point in time where you say, okay, well, this could be something. And especially with what we've had thrown in our face over the last few years of credit score and credit score and credit score on your finances. And Carl Richards, who runs BehaviorGap.com, we spoke to him when we met you guys. We were fortunate enough to meet you and him at FinCon this year. And he suggested talking about money early, to not make it a taboo subject. To not make it something that has to be hidden and private, to say, hey, listen, this is the reality of a situation. If I was sick, I would tell you. If I have an ex-wife or an ex-husband, I would tell you. So if we're going to be in this relationship and I've got $20K in debt, I owe it to tell you that.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, just looking back a couple of weeks, just because somebody appears to be financially successful, is a hit rap star, and is making millions, bringing in millions and millions of dollars, doesn't necessarily mean that they're financially stable. They may have $53 million in debt and need to be bailed out by their
Mark Zuckerberg
reality TV wife, or a beg from Mark Zuckerberg.
Right. I mean, how many Hollywood stars do you know that have gone bankrupt? And you just kind of, your jaw drops. But the converse is also true. The people who make 40, 50, 60 can be the most stable.
Right.
So with $8 million.
Right. Yeah. There was that story last year, I think it was, or maybe a year and a half ago, of the janitor who passed away, and he gave $6 million to a library and a school, and everybody in town thought he was dirt poor. In reality, he was one of the richest people in town, because he made wise financial decisions.
Yeah, I think that.
Well, it's interesting that the St. Louis Rams now will not allow their rookies drafted to sign a contract until they met with a financial advisor.
That's a good idea.
That's smart.
For the same reason you're talking with Kanye, is these guys all of a sudden they get their signing bonus.
Do you need to have your CFP be an advisor?
Trust me, you can get in that game, because these guys are not smart about money. I don't want to say they're not smart, but they're just uneducated about money historically. Yeah. A lot of them out of college early or never went to college. Yeah. And when the opportunity arises, that they find somebody they trust, they tell all their teammates, they tell all the guys they played, amateur ball with and college ball with. And so you can pick up 10, 15, 20 clients in a hurry.
There you go.
Well, I just have I get so angry when I think about the school system, and we spend all this time and money trying to get students to earn as much money as they can, but then we don't tell them how to manage that money. And you can earn, as these examples show, millions and millions of dollars and not have anything to show for it at the end of the day. Yeah. And then you have, how many people are, filing Chapter 11 or Chapter 7 or, whatever. And here they just blew, millions of dollars.
Yeah. So it's just interesting that there was a comment here on the side from Poppy Brandel, and she said that there are some people in New York City who look homeless, but they have millions of dollars, and there are well-dressed, hip people who live in New York City who are living paycheck to paycheck. It is kind of interesting, and there's a dichotomy of lifestyle and what people earn, and it is interesting that so many people feel the need or are compelled to live up to a lifestyle. And I'm sure this very much happens in the dating world. I mean, I've been removed from it for a little over 12 years now, but there is this need, or you feel compelled to tell people that you are successful. Nobody wants you if you're not considered successful by the world standards.
Well, sure. Right. And I mean, and particularly in our community, in the gay and lesbian community, right? We are inherently insecure people in a lot of ways. And as chairman of the Gay and Lesbian Community Center, it was something that we battled all the time in one form or another. And so, our sense of self-worth often comes from our toys, not from anything deeper. And so we'll spend every dime we have to get that BMW, the brand new BMW, put ourselves in the hole just so that we can throw off that that impression of security and stability when it doesn't really exist.
So we our first Queer Money show was called Overspending to Overcompensate, and that was kind of what we touched on. But I'm curious, since you brought the question up, why do you think that the LGBT community tends to have that inherent sense of insecurity?
Well, I think it's because of, while we were growing up, we kept this dark secret. And we didn't want to share it with anybody. And we were always there was always the chatter going on in the world around us about what gay people were and how terrible and all of this kind of stuff. And so our self-worth just kind of shrank the more with each one of those criticisms and each one of those insults. So I think that we are just very insecure and susceptible to that sort of ego crisis that can come from maybe just not having enough money to pay for dinner.
Right.
Well, I wonder in the LGBT community, there's safety, it seems, in bigger cities. If you're from the middle of Nebraska and you're trying to come out, that's got to be brutally tough. Whereas if you're in New York or Chicago or LA or San Francisco, obviously San Francisco, but bigger cities that are more accepting and you can find pockets of whatever, sexuality or race or ethnicity or interest, you can find pockets of your people, if you will. Right. Those places in bigger cities tend to have flashier things to do and emphasize the flashy and success, and the newspapers and all the local blogs are saying, check out this hip place and that cool place. And so not only are you now in a big city where things are more expensive, but your whole, social life and all the people you're with are doing things that are more expensive.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's kind of how the whole gay ghettos got started, right? That's how San Francisco got started, right? It was once a ghetto, and all the gays were migrated to that because they could live together in the same way with Chelsea in New York, right?
Right. It was the physical safety. You felt comfortable, and you could actually feel comfortable walking down the street as a gay couple or as a gay man or woman, knowing that you weren't going to get bashed, and it's interesting, one of the articles that we talked about last week about coming out at work, it's those cities that have attracted people from the center of the country. Those individuals who want to be successful have been attracted to those coastal cities that have large LGBT populations. And because of that, those cities have benefited because those individuals have gone there and started companies. Yeah. Whereas they didn't feel comfortable starting a company because they didn't feel confident as a gay leader living in a particular city and maybe in the middle of Nebraska or Kansas or in a state where they knew that if they were to fight for gay rights, they probably would have their business shut down.
Well, that was one of the points I made in my book, was that San Francisco in particular drew in this group of gays and lesbians who were very tech savvy because that was how they communicated. That was how they found dates. So the city became inundated with a class of people that was highly skilled at technology. And so, I think you're right that the center of the country, the gay brain trust from the center of the country fled to the coast.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, sorry, I just need to make a comment here. Poppy Brandel again wrote a comment on the side here about living in the West Village, and has always wondered why the real estate in San Francisco and West Village have been some of the highest in the country. It is kind of interesting because in a lot of the cases, that's not how those areas started out. They started out as the barrio or as the ghetto, and it was through changes that the gay community made. But it's an interesting topic, and one actually we're going to cover here in a couple of weeks about whether or not those cities now are the best choices for gays because of the fact that they are so financial. There's maybe a financial disadvantage to living in those cities now.
Yeah, I'm going to San Francisco on Thursday.
Those aren't just LGBT issues. Those two particular places you picked were, for decades have been the most expensive places in the country.
Right.
I understand what you're saying that the LGBT community may have gone to a less expensive part early on, and I don't know whether or not that's true. But if you're saying it is, I have no reason not to believe you. But the tide in both cities just continued to rise, and now you're seeing that in Miami and LA,
right,
where it's starting to become unaffordable in both of those areas as well. And those are both big LGBT communities. Yeah. So. It's one of those chicken and egg things.
Damn gays, they're ruining everything for us.
Gentrification.
Citywide. I mean, that's San Francisco. It's the second most densely populated city in the country, and it's got the highest rental rates except for New York. I mean, it is a city that is bursting at the seams. They have 20,000 new people coming in every year, and they have 0 building permits going in for residential units.
Yeah, this is true.
Wow.
That's got to play into the fact that you have lots of young people living there who are trying to figure out how they can have a social life and how to have an enjoyable life and not spend all of their money on rent and getting to and from work.
Yeah, it's bad out there, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's got to be tough. So to get us back on topic, there was this question that came up specifically for Dave, and I know we touched on it already, but a little bit, but maybe you can elaborate. How has social media like Facebook, Twitter, Grindr, Scruff, and whatnot affected the wooing phase? What's the biggest impact that that's had on the dating scene from start to finish?
Okay, so my belief is that the impact that these, particularly Facebook, let's talk about that because they track all of their data. And if you ever stop to think about the data that they have access to, it's kind of shocking. I mean, they know when you go into a relationship, they know how long you're in that relationship, and they know when it's going to terminate, and they know all the averages, they know the ages, all this kind of stuff. But
they know when it's going to terminate?
Huh?
They know when it's going to terminate?
Well, they know what the average lifespan of a relationship for a 23-year-old is. And so they can kind of project out. And this is live data that they collect on the fly. But anyway, so if in the traditional, if you will, dating scene, your pool of potential mates was arm's reach. It was either at work, at the bar, at the gym, arm's reach. But and it was limited to a small group of people, maybe 50. Facebook, you can have 5,000 people, and they're all over the planet, and you can find out a lot about them, not just from what they post, the verbiage, but you can draw conclusions from the pictures, what they choose to post and what kind of pictures, where do they go, who are they with? Are they always in a picture alone? Are they always with people? What are they doing with people? So the biggest impact that social media has had is expanding the pool of potential mates well beyond anything we've ever had before, and allowing you to touch each one of those potential mates whenever you want to, by putting up a new picture, by putting up a post, and they'll see it. So the communication that you have with this large group of people enables you to really to have potential mates like everywhere. So I think that is the biggest impact that it's had, is just the sheer number of people that you could you have to choose from.
Do you know yet, or does Facebook know yet, the success of the relationships that they've helped culminate?
Well, I mean, statistically speaking, I forget the name of the group that does the study, but like I said earlier, that the relationships formed online or through an app are more stable than relationships that are formed in a traditional setting.
That's interesting.
And I mean, that is you go look it up, but it is hands down the truth that those relationships, I think that it's because the interview process you can have so much of an interview process. You can really dig into that person's history, and they don't even really know you're doing it, right? Yeah, I mean, on Facebook in particular.
Yeah.
What's that?
I was just on your wall today checking you out.
You're in a relationship. Something like Facebook are so hard, and I, Dave's numbers are not only factually correct, but fascinating. Look into kind of how we date, but that doesn't even include, hey, who's that girl in the picture you just posted, or who's that guy in the picture you just posted? I mentioned earlier Lesbian Attack, and they posted a picture of about 30 women in this group, all in like a group shot. Hey, we're all here. And a lesbian friend of mine from New York sent me a note, said, hey, the third one in on the left, what's her deal? I want to meet her when I come out to LA next month. Right. And so you have the situation where I don't know if, I did the introduction. I don't know if they hooked up. I don't know what their deal is, but that wouldn't be a statistic that technically would count. And yet it's because of social apps, and what Dave was saying is the pool expanded because every picture is in essence somewhat of a possibility.
So, hey guys, sorry, just gonna take a second here and answer this question. Jacob had just asked if we talk about politics, and just to let you know, Jacob, we generally try to steer clear of politics because it can become such a spurious subject. Money is tough enough. We're gonna
someday we'll talk about politics.
We're gonna broach the money subject for now. Yeah, and then maybe we'll sneak in some politics.
And then we'll never work again.
Right. We'll have one watcher.
I guess the question that I have is, do you think that maybe relationships start out on Grindr or Tinder and then maybe migrate to Facebook? Is Facebook like
that's a really good question. And actually, there's crossover. A Grindr could just be a hookup, and a lot of times it really is just a hookup, right? But if it goes beyond that, yeah, you look them up on Facebook, right? And you see if they gave you their real name, and then you start doing their homework.
Their real name.
We all become Dick Tracy.
Right? Is that your name?
And the other thing, this is really interesting. I don't know if you guys knew this, but when you meet somebody on Grindr and you exchange phone number with them, right? Did you know that Facebook has access to your address book and then will list that person and people you may know? So Facebook actually facilitates you going and looking up the person that you met on Grindr.
So once you put their phone number in your phone, then they tie the two together.
Facebook keeps track of the phone numbers that are in your phone, and that's one of the ways that it gets your who you may know selection.
Gotcha.
Well, that's why you should always use WhatsApp.
It just recommended Ellen Johnson.
That's why I use WhatsApp, so they can't track you. And it's interesting because the best way to put this, but a friend of mine recently met a woman, spent the night with her a couple times, and said, "I'd like to be Facebook friends with you." And she said, "We're not at that stage yet." So they can sleep together for a weekend. There's all kinds of, they did nothing but from Friday to Monday, from the report I heard, that was all they did. But the minute she said, "Oh, let's be Facebook friends,"
that's a little too
that's almost like taking her home to your mom and dad.
That's personal.
Yeah. It's like, I'm not going to take you to my mom and dad yet, but I'll have sex with you.
Right. You're going to introduce everybody to all your friends because you met somebody new on your Facebook stream. And it's interesting because you never know certainly what that person is going to do when it comes to Facebook. I know of several individuals who opened up Facebook and found out that they were all of a sudden in a relationship with someone that they weren't quite certain that they should have been in a relationship.
They were the last to find out.
They maybe had gone out on a couple of dates, but now they were happily married. Well, maybe not that much, but you know what I'm getting at is all of a sudden you find out you're in a relationship and that it wasn't necessarily a conversation that you've had. Maybe not verbal, but a conversation.
You got bogarted,
right? Exactly. Yeah.
For a relationship.
So.
Well, there is a thing that if it isn't on Facebook, it didn't really happen. And so if you haven't posted it in a relationship, then you're not really doing.
Whenever we go anywhere, I was like, we got to check in, otherwise it didn't actually happen.
Right.
There's no point in doing this.
Right. Our lives are being tracked and cataloged in massive data centers in Washington and Oregon.
Massive data center.
Is that Vanilla Sky, or is what Tom Cruise movie is that, where it's all being captured? You can predict your date, what you're doing.
Oh,
not Vanilla Sky.
Crap! I'm gonna forget the name.
Minority Report.
Minority Report. Yeah. Yeah. So we have another question here on the side here. Sharon asks, I don't know if my partner is divulging all of his financial information. Is there a way to find out? I guess if I ask for tax returns. It's an interesting question, and we actually have a blog post. I'll put it in the show notes. If you're in a relationship and have been in a relationship for a significant amount of time, it is worthwhile to start asking some of those questions. But one of the best ways to do that is to be forthcoming on your own and start off by talking about your own finances. But then one of the best ways to really find out what kind of state your partner is in financially is to go together and go online to freecreditreport.com. I think that's the website, and just get your credit reports.
It's just creditreport.com.
Or credit.
It just happens to be free.
Yeah, that's right. Creditreport.com, and you can order those. There's 3 you get 3 free annually, and we recommend that you do one every 4 months. And it's really hard to hide anything from those reports, so you find out pretty quickly what kind of credit cards or credit history your partner has. John and I were just talking about doing that. Was that this morning, or maybe it was yesterday that we need to do that again? And just it's a way to kind of pull back the covers and see what's happening in your relationship financially. and you can't really hide anything that way either.
Yeah.
So.
I think now that we don't have any
I do want to give a little. Sorry, I was just going to say I do want to give a little plug that MoneyTips.com will also be offering free credit reports here in the next couple of weeks.
Nice.
Yes.
As part of a whole suite of apps and technologies they're rolling out.
Nice. Let us know when you do that, and we'll add that to the show notes after the fact.
Is that moneytips.com?
Yep.
Okay.
So we're pushing an hour here, and I don't want to get too long. So I guess what's the takeaway from all of this? The idea is to try to help people be a little bit more successful financially through the dating phase. I guess the one takeaway that I got from it was maybe having the financial discussion a little bit earlier on than you might be comfortable with, but making sure that you have that discussion early on so you know what's fair and equitable to both parties and you're not getting into something a little bit that you can't handle. Does anybody have any takeaways they want to share?
I would just say, do your homework to the extent that you can without getting tax returns and credit reports. It's the internet has just a wealth of information about people. Google them. Yeah. And start checking them out that way, particularly Facebook. There's so much information that people put up on Facebook. The financial disparity is a problem in most of our relationships in the gay world, I think. I guess my thought on that is that you address it early and you lay out expectations. Otherwise, you're going to end up coming and talking to me later.
Right. Which is good for you, but not for them.
Yeah. Right. It's not good.
Yeah, it is sad that money is the number one reason for relationships.
Is that would you say? Actually, that's a good question, Dave. Is that the same? And I guess gays have only been getting married for not even a year yet. Is that the same reason why gays are getting divorced too? Is primarily because of money problems?
Yeah. I mean, people are people, and most of the problems come from money, and the mismatched expectations of how much can you spend and how much do you make and how do I got to pay for that. I mean, we get most of our phone calls for divorces in January when the credit card statements come due from Christmas.
Wow.
Nobody wants to pay all these bills. That's when our phones go nuts. So I mean, finance is a big driver in divorce.
That's why we're unfortunate here. That's the way it is.
Yeah. Justin, sorry I interrupted you.
No. And that's a fascinating. What Dave just pointed out about January is really eye-opening. I would say trust your gut and ask about money early and be communicative. But if somebody is very cagey, if they are, all of a sudden, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want, it's different with saying, hey, I don't know, finances are uncomfortable for me this early in a relationship versus I don't want to talk about it, or that's none of your business. If somebody's very defensive about money, there's generally a reason. And it's not just, hey, that's personal for me. It's not something I want to talk about this early in. I certainly wouldn't bring it up on a first date or probably even a second. By the time you think you're, third, fourth, fifth, and you this may turn into a relationship, I'd at least like to know. Are we on the same page? Because if we are going to do this, and I could be wrong. I know we're talking about an extended wooing phase, and my wooing phase was 12 years, so I'm, really extended.
How much does that cost?
Yeah, that's expensive.
Dollar sign.
I was very fortunate that my work at the time was flying me into her city every other weekend. So otherwise, I'd be talking to Dave about my debt load. And but I think if you trust what you see and believe that if somebody's willing to talk to you about finances, they're going to be willing to talk to you about other things, and that's how relationships work. And if they're cagey and hiding things, then that's just the tip of what they're going to be cagey and hiding about, and that's not going to be a healthy relationship for you.
Right. That's interesting. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just going to add one of the things that we didn't really talk that much about was how to woo at an economical way. And it's interesting. I'm a part of several large Facebook groups, LGBT Facebook groups. Wow, that's hard to say. And we're talking over 40,000 members. And I did kind of an unscientific study, and I asked individuals, what would you think if you were out on a date and the person you were with, who you thought was very well off or very successful financially, and you were on the date, a dinner date, and they said that they were going to pay for dinner, And then after that, they whipped out a coupon or a Groupon or something like that. And I was surprised that more than 80% of people either said it didn't matter to them, or even more than 60% of people said that they were impressed, that this was most likely the way this person got to where they were financially. And so we may think, and like you said, Dave, we live in a community that is, we have to impress or pull off that we are financially successful. Well, there are people out there who part of the way you could impress them is by actually being a little bit economical about your money, because maybe saving 20% on dinner here and there is what's going to be able to allow you to take them with you when you go to Iceland and stay in the ice castle, or PV and go to the beach in Puerto Vallarta or something like that.
Twice in 1 month, Dave. Yeah. I saw that.
It was a stressful month.
Well, you know, my girlfriend says she's a saying, she says, saving is sexy. And I think that kind of plays into that. You know, if I'm going to get the same meal and I can get it for $25 as opposed to $35, why would I pay $35? That's my $10. Why am I giving it away to somebody else if they're willing to give me the exact same experience for $10 less? And if you do that all the time, suddenly you're looking at, you know, $500, $600, $700, $800 at the end of the year. You know, is it a ton of money in the grand scheme of things? No, but it's a really nice weekend away.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and it allows you to reconnect. I also think if you live in any one of the top 100 size cities in this country and you can't find a free or inexpensive fun thing to do, you're not looking.
Right.
Because every weekend, every night is some sort of show or event or opening or where people are just trying to generate buzz, and they're going to let you in for free, or they're going to let you in at a huge discount. You know, if I can see the Anaheim Angels, and I'm a baseball fan, they put tickets on Gold Star. The same seats other people are paying $45 for, I paid $16 for.
Right.
Well, it comes back to, again, why am I paying Mike Trout's salary if the Angels aren't requiring me to do so?
That's true. Half those words, I don't even understand what you just said.
There's a ball and a bat and a stick. You're halfway home.
Oh, he gets baseball.
So, David and I want to thank you both for joining us today. We really appreciate it. If you haven't been to Money Tips, please check out what Justin and Michael are doing over at Money Tips. They do a lot of great work. They actually have a very great video of two guys named Jeffrey Guys over there. And then also we want to thank Dave Johnson for being on our show. Please check out his book on Amazon. It's called Looking: Technology's Impact on Modern Relationships. And if you have not already done so, please subscribe to next week's Queer Money, which is called Gay Sex, Gay Money. And we'll talk about David, get up on it. We'll talk about the financial consequences of money in a gay sex world. So thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we will talk to you later. See you next week.
Just want to make sure we, again, thank our sponsors of the show, the HIV Smart, who, again, are dispelling some of the myths around HIV. Check out their website at hivsmart.org.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. We appreciate it.
Good night.
Good night.
I'm going to pause the recording.